Thomas and Friends Storytime. The story of James the Funny Engine. Starring James, Thomas the Tank Engine and Gordon the Big Engine. Based on the Railway series by the Reverend W. Audrey. Created by Britt Allcroft. Read by Mark Morahan. Welcome to the island of Sodor. A small magical island surrounded by sparkling bright blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches, castles to explore and bustling docks where giant cranes lift and load cargo from large ships. There are also lots and lots of railway lines where engines work hard to deliver goods and passengers to their destinations. Today's story is about James, the number 5 engine, and how he learnt that whatever kind of job you do, you can always be really useful. James is a bright red steam engine who can pull both passenger coaches and freight cars. James can be a bit of a show-off and sometimes jokes around too much. But James is responsible, reliable and hard-working. When James first came to Sodor, he wasn't shiny red, he was painted black, and he had old wooden brakes. One of James's first jobs was to take the troublesome trucks to the docks. But troublesome trucks can be tricky, and James didn't know how to treat them. James was steaming down a hill when the troublesome trucks began pushing him. James went faster and faster. "They're pushing me! They're pushing me!" he cried. Soon James was out of control and racing along the tracks. James tried to stop, but his old wooden brakes didn't work properly and they caught fire. Then James came to a tight bend. He was going so fast he came off the tracks. Crash, bang, thump. James came to rest in the middle of a field. Thomas brought the breakdown train and they took poor James to the steamworks. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting for them. "James," he said, "you shall have some proper brakes and a new coat of paint. But instead of black, we can paint you bright red." James was very proud of his splendid red paint. So proud, it made him a bit of a show-off. Sir Topham Hatt told the engines a special guest was coming to Sodor, a railway inspector from the mainland. "I am the smartest and most useful engine," James boasted to Gordon. "I should be the one to collect our guest. An engine like me should only carry passengers." "I've seen you pulling freight cars," chuckled Gordon. "You're only a goods engine." That upset James, and he puffed grumpily away. At the yard, James decided he would play a trick on Gordon. "I'm taking Gordon's passenger coaches today," James told Thomas. James coupled up to Gordon's coaches and sniggered as he hurried off. When Gordon arrived at the yard, Thomas told him that James had taken the express. "Just you wait until Sir Topham Hatt hears about this," Gordon huffed. "Here's James," shouted James as he pulled into Marron Station. Sir Topham Hatt looked very serious. "What's this, James? I hear you took Gordon's coaches." "I was only messing about, sir," said James. "It was a joke." "Some jokes are funny, James, but not this one," said Sir Topham Hatt. "You have caused confusion and delay." The next morning, James said sorry to Gordon for tricking him. James worked hard all day pulling freight cars. Sir Topham Hatt was very pleased with him. On his way home, James met a smartly dressed man waiting at Marron Station. "I have a meeting with Sir Topham Hatt," said the man. "Can I ride with you to Knapford Station?" "Of course," said James. And he puffed back to the station as smoothly and quickly as he could. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting on the platform when James arrived. The smartly dressed man climbed down from James's cab. "This is the railway inspector I told you about," said Sir Topham Hatt. "James gave me a splendid ride here today. You must be very proud of him." said the inspector. James beamed from buffer to buffer. Sir Topham Hatt agreed. James is a very splendid engine indeed. The end.
It was a noisy day on the island of Sodor. Engines huffed and chuffed, wheezed and whooshed, and rattled and roared. Thomas was at Tidmouth's sheds. The fat controller arrived on Edward.
Thomas, I have a special for you. A great composer is coming to the island. He is going to write a special tune for a grand concert this afternoon. You are to collect the great composer from Knapford. Please take him round the island to hear the sounds of Sodor. Then he can write his special tune.
Thomas's boiler bubbled.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
And Thomas chuffed quickly away. Thomas clickety-clacked along the track.
I must show the great composer the sounds of Sodor. But what are the sounds of Sodor? I can hear birds, animals, and the sea. These must be the sounds of Sodor.
Just then, there came a wheesh and a whoosh. Percy and Emily puffed past. They were pulling trains of troublesome trucks.
Hello, Percy. Hello, Emily. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, Thomas.
Percy and Emily were noisy. Thomas couldn't hear the birds or the animals or the sea.
Cinders and dashes. How will the great composer hear the sounds of Sodor with all my noisy friends huffing and puffing? I know. I shall take the great composer to places where there aren't any engines. Then he will be able to hear the sounds of Sodor